Welcome to Cards Hub 365, powered by Gray Bar here on Sports Hub STL. All content provided by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Brenden Schaeffer here with Stefan, Caray. And as the title indicates, last night was not a lot of fun in St. Louis. The Cardinals offense got it done, but pitching had their struggles in yesterday's game, game one of a 9-game homestand. Brenden, let's just start right there. This was a game that the Cardinals probably needed to win, just couldn't find a way to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, when you are able to stake out that 7-2 lead like the Cardinals did after Bobby Witt Jr. gets the homer in the first inning, and that's the response is to put up 7 against Michael Lorenzen, you're feeling really good about things. And unfortunately, Andre Palante just hit a wall in the 5th inning, and the guys that were pretty accustomed, Stefan, to seeing be able to bail out the Cardinals when their starter doesn't maybe have a very lengthy outing, those guys are now beginning to falter as well. Steven Matz was squared up pretty good, I thought, by the Royals that he faced last night. And Kyle Leahy kind of dealing with the edges of the strike zone a little bit, maybe less confidence with his stuff right now in the zone with the way that batters are turning him around. And you found that combination to be a pretty unfortunate one for the Cardinals as the Royals put up 8 runs in a row. The Cardinals don't find a way to answer, and that 7-2 lead disappears. And suddenly you're staring down the barrel this evening of a potential series loss against the Royals. That's just a tough spot to be in after 3 innings of play last night, being in a great situation. The Cardinals squander that one. And look, it's kind of the beginning of a little bit of a miniature trend here when you think back to the weekend against the Rangers. The Cardinals had a couple of games where they didn't pitch well, and the bats were quiet in that series. You find the middle game 2-0, but otherwise I think you kind of look at the pitching recently and say, man, with what we had counted on these guys to be, because they were doing it so consistently, like Leahy and Matz and company, if those guys come back down to earth, what does the Cardinals pitching staff look like? Might be, unfortunately, a pretty fair question to ask right now.
It's a great question to ask. I mean, you look at Andre Palante's numbers through his first 6 starts of the season, 32 2/3, had a 4.1 ERA, 20 strikeouts, 12 walks, but the 222 batting average against on the sinker is the number really to look at. This is all from Branden Kiley on X. He certainly had a really good deep dive into the struggles of Palante. Over his last 6 starts, the numbers have been totally different. 33 1/3, 21 earned runs. That's good for a 5.7 ERA. And on that sinker, a 438 batting average against. If he can't find that pitch, especially against right-handed hitters, there's going to be a whole lot of damage done against him, which there was. And, you know, you look at how this team has performed. They've relied heavily on good pitching. There have been a lot of tight games where the offense has scored 3-4 runs and the pitching has kept them in it. You come back to your home ballpark, well, it's starting to get a little hotter. The wind was blowing out yesterday. We saw the ball flying for both teams. But it's certainly not how you wanted to start when you factor in the fact that the Dodgers will be in town this weekend and the Blue Jays who are surging after that.
Yeah, it's not where you want to be. And Palante's situation, you mentioned it with the sinker. Like, you think back to last year when he struggled out of the bullpen to begin the season and the Cardinals sent him down. He wanted to work on some things to be able to do more against right-handed batters. And then when he returned to the rotation, that was a weapon for him to be able to throw some pitches inside to righties, to be able to kind of tie them up, make them less comfortable at the plate. And then to see the regression right now against right-handed batters in particular, that's kind of probably a good way to diagnose what's going on with Palante. And I guess the question that a lot of people would have is, well, why would the Cardinals be so content to stick with him through the struggles if you've got a guy like Michael McGreevy down there in AAA Memphis that has been doing so well? And I think we all agree he was worthy of a rotation spot out of spring training, but the numbers game just went against Michael McGreevy in that situation. But now it's a spot where people are looking at this particular role in the rotation and saying, well, with Palante, could you swap him out? Would that be something that would make sense? Stefan, I could see the merits to that. I also could see the merits to thinking back to last season after Palante did rejoin the rotation. He was so effective. He was really one of the Cardinals' top starters through the second half of the season. And so you would love to be able to find a way to channel that, to draw back to what that looked like for him and get that back into his game within the next 5 to 10 to 15 days. You do have the benefit right now where the Cardinals are still above 500. The early record and the way they performed in May allows them maybe a little bit more leeway. But I also look at the schedule coming up, and Oli Marmol mentioned it last night as a reason that he stuck with Palante a little bit deeper in that outing. He allowed him to face Bobby Witt Jr., was hoping maybe you get lucky and get a ball hit at somebody and find a way to escape that jam and not have to go to your bullpen so very early because they know they've got 13 days where they play 13 games. And with that in mind, I wonder if the Michael McGreevy call-up happens, but not really at the expense of Palante, but just as another version of that modified six-man rotation that we saw Steven Matz in that role earlier in the year. Maybe it's time for McGreevy to get that opportunity and still allow for Palante to work through some of these things as the Cardinals hope that they can get the better version of him back.
Yeah, you love the idea of a six-man rotation. However, it's good in theory unless you don't go out and get longevity from your starters. And that's what Palante has been struggling to do. And you mentioned last year his struggles getting sent down, coming back, how to tap into that again. Maybe you have to send him down to find a way to get back to who he was in 2024. Now, I'm not suggesting that that's the way that the Cardinals need to go about it, but there are certainly a number of things they have to think about with regards to their starting pitching. And Palante being one of those more expendable players, you're not paying him like you're paying Fetty or Gray or Michaelis. There's certainly an easier conversation to have about him rather than the other four in the rotation. So I'll be curious to see how they approach that. But when you have a six-man rotation, you're trying to take pressure off of the bullpen. You've got to get longevity from your starters. You have to, because if you're getting 4 1/3 from a starting pitcher, that means the bullpen has to eat up that many more innings.
Yeah, and you're doing it with one fewer relief arm as well, because if and when McGreevy gets that call up as the sixth man, even if it's only for a moment, you're talking about having somebody from that bullpen optioned to make it happen. And like they could do it in a way that, I don't know exactly the way that it would play out, but if they were to pitch McGreevy later in this weekend or early next week, and then maybe you could even option him right back, almost just say, hey, we're not going to go a reliever short for this stint. It's just going to be for a day, and then we're going to pull somebody back up, so we're back to an 8-man bullpen. And then 15 days later, you could maybe do it again with McGreevy, allowing the rest of your starters to kind of roll through. I don't know exactly the way those days are going to line up, Stefan, or if this is something the Cardinals are very strongly considering. But you're right. Like, that is something that you have to make note of, and it's why earlier in the season, you'd have some sporadic outings where Michaelis had a pretty short one, and there was one from Fetty, but largely the Cardinals staff has been able to get moderately deep into games. Like, it's never going to be, again, the way that it used to be in baseball, but if you guys are getting 6 innings pretty consistently, that allows you and affords you the luxury to be able to do some of these other things to take some of the pressure off of the 5-man rotation by adding a 6th guy into that. I personally am a fan of it if they do it the right way, and I think they've got obviously some really smart baseball people monitoring the schedule and how it could work out and how they want to game plan this for the month of June, especially when you think about, like, okay, so outside of the outings like last night where Palante just doesn't get you very deep and you're having to go to sort of those mop-up guys in your bullpen, a guy like Matt Swanson, he's the last man in that pen right now and was just in there to pitch a couple of innings late in the game last night. Other than that, there's not really been a role carved out for him that I feel like Ollie Marmol is super comfortable using him in, which is not to say like that's fair or unfair to Swanson, fair or unfair to Ollie. It's just the nature of the beast when you're a player that hasn't really seen the big leagues too much and the sporadic opportunities that Swanson has been able to earn. He's pitched okay. His ERA is in the 3s at my last check. So there's like some potential there, but it's also a role that at the end of the day is maybe not the most important to the Cardinals bullpen right now when they're only really using him in those mop-up spots. But I guess to your point, Stefan, if there's a mop-up spot, it's because the starter didn't go very deep, and that's the moment that you're going to wish you had a Matt Swanson out there in the bullpen to give you that extra level of coverage. And it's a little bit scary. Like, the regression is not just happening in the rotation. It's been with guys like Steven Matz. It's been with guys like Kyle Leahy, who there was a point in time this season that those guys were both infallible. Like, you just knew they were going to go out and get the job done for you no matter what the role, no matter how many outs Ollie Marmol asked them to get. You just had a really high degree of confidence in those players. If that also goes by the wayside, you can kind of see the cracks beginning to form just a little bit. And look, I'm not saying that that's going to be a permanent problem, but it is something to at least make note of right now with the Cardinals, because there was a point in time in April where we thought this bullpen stunk, right? Like, we looked at the way that they were performing collectively as a unit, and we're like, I don't know how they're going to get nine innings of outs tonight. Like, how are they going to be able to do this? They quickly turn things around, and so there's the potential to do that again here, Stefan, but it is worth noting that right now, if you take the weekend and what we saw yesterday into account, yeah, cracks are beginning to form a little bit in this pitching staff, and to be able to get as many guys back on track as quickly as possible is going to be critical for not only Ollie Marmol, Dusty Blake, and everybody that's working with these guys to try to right the ship right now.
That's a great point, Brenden. A reminder that this show is brought to you by Graybar, your distributor for electrical and datacom needs. This is Cards Hub 365. He's Brenden Schaeffer. I'm Stefan Caray. Get involved in the conversation, your questions, your comments, your concerns from last night. Be sure to type them out for us so that we can discuss them here on the show. And Sports Hub STL is brought to you by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Brenden, talking a little bit about the last two opponents for the Cardinals, the Rangers and the Royals, they have maybe more similarities than differences. They're two teams that pitch the ball, they defend well, can't hit. And maybe the last two games could be cause for concern for Cardinals fans. You've allowed 18 runs against teams that, by most accounts, can't hit. You look across the board. 4 times the Royals have scored 10 or more runs this year. They scored 3 or less in 18 of 28 last month. I don't know. I think that this was a game that got out of hand for the Cardinals, but you've got to find a way to stop it, because you're facing some better offensive competition coming up.
Yeah, like when you play the Dodgers, it's not going to be the same lineup that you're seeing against the Royals or that you saw against the Rangers. And like part of that for the Rangers, I feel like you'd probably agree with this. They play below their level so far this season offensively. And speaking of that Texas lineup, guys like Marcus Semien, who had a big series against the Cardinals over the weekend in Arlington, that's more what he's capable of doing. The numbers haven't reflected that to this point in the year. They've got some names in the lineup that historically can hurt you. And I think maybe the Cardinals were just the victim of them kind of finding their level a little bit. But you're right. Like when you look at the season-long numbers, the Rangers still rank 27th in the league in runs scored. The Royals have been even a run below that, 28th in baseball in total runs scored. And the Royals, before calling up Jack Caglione last night, and look, we'll see what he ends up bringing to that lineup. It seemed like his mere presence, was enough to help the Royals put up a 10 spot last night. But guys like Salvador Perez, you expect to probably bounce back. Largely, though, it's a lineup that does have some, at least on paper, some holes in it. And so you'd like to think the Cardinals pitching staff would be able to take a little bit better advantage. And so far over the last 4 games, really all we have seen is Sonny Gray be a guy that was extremely successful against these lesser lineups, at least in the way that they've performed. And so you're right, like finding what that looks like over the next couple of games against the Royals, which you can never take any big league lineup and just count them out and say you're going to be able to mow through them. But you certainly have a different level of expectation to be able to kind of find your level against these guys and then know that when the Dodgers come to town, it's going to ratchet up the level of competition. So I do think it's important for the Cardinals to try to sooner rather than later. That's the guys that are starting the next couple of games and really the bullpen, because those are the guys that are all going to be pitching in that Dodgers series, to be able to find out, what's kind of gone wrong with some of the things that have happened on the mound the last few days and find a way to quickly address it before that thumping lineup comes to town later on this week.
Yeah, the Cardinals struggled with runners in scoring position yesterday, 3 for 12. And normally those are pretty good numbers for this team. If you can get 3 for 12, depending on how many runners are aboard, this pitching staff has been able to hold it down. Last night, a lot of opportunities late to score. Runners on first and second, 1 out. Runners on first and third, even with 2 outs. Saw a lot of early in the count swings, a lot of light pop outs, not really working counts, which was sort of uncharacteristic of this team because Brant Brown has really preached waiting for your pitch. Unfortunate for the Cardinals to drop game 1 by 3.
Yeah, and that was the question that I asked Ollie Marmol last night. Just like, okay, against the starter, Lorenzen, what did you like about the approach? Because it was obviously something that worked out well, and he alluded to the fact that, they saw a ton of pitches in that first inning. I thought even in an inning where you didn't score runs, it matters to see Lars Nootbaar go up there and battle. Mason Wynn, Brendan Donovan, like you got Lorenzen's pitch count up, and more than anything, I think the rest of that lineup was able to kind of witness and see, okay, here's what his pitches are looking like. Here's what Lorenzen's stuff is doing. And then it was almost immediately thereafter that the Cardinals began their rally, and they were really tagging him all over the yard, got him out of the game before the end of the 3rd inning. But then from there, it was like they were setting the table and they weren't able to cash in on some of those key spots. And Ollie made reference to that, is that they definitely left some opportunities and some ducks on the pond that they just weren't able to cash in. That's got to be kind of like a dual frustration, though, because in a game where you score 7, you'd like to think that they're scoring beyond the 3rd inning for sure. I understand that, but you scored 7. Like that should generally be enough. And so it's kind of hard as a manager, I would feel like, after a game like yesterday, to have your frustration be with your offense, where there's legitimate, like over the last 6 innings, you didn't put up anything and you had chances to do so. But at the same time, in the back of your head, you got to just be thinking, man, we had a 7-2 lead. We had Palante put up a couple of zeros and then completely run into a wall in the 5th inning. We're in the first game of 13 days in a row that we're playing ball. And then we go to Matz and we go to Leahy. Like those are the guys that are supposed to be able to calm things down. You had it on a lot of different fronts last night, Stefan, where it could have been the game that sort of, I'll say, stopped the bleeding. It's not like the Cardinals had lost multiple games in a row prior to Monday or prior to Tuesday, but it feels like a little bit of a precarious spot in your season when you lose a series on the road in the way that you did in Texas, and then to be able to have a chance to immediately right that ship and have that squandered by an element of your team that had been pretty reliable to this point. I think that's where probably a lot of that frustration might come. For the Cardinals, we've seen them do a really good job of not making more of it than it is, not allowing one loss to turn into 2, into 3, into 4. That's what they're really going to need from the Cardinals tonight, and it's crazy to think, though, from Leo, is it delusional that I'm looking forward to a Michaelis start? He's been one of the more solid guys in this rotation, and really, I think, not the stopper in the sense that they've lost a bunch in a row, but I think he has a chance to be the stopper of a trend that has begun to form where the starters just have not been quite as consistent recently outside of Sonny Gray on Saturday.
Yeah, and it's not Flag Day, but the Cubs are winning. They're beating the bad teams that they're playing, and the Brewers are winning. So you have to find a way to not let this spiral out of control if you're St. Louis. If you didn't already know, baseball season is officially underway, and it's time to step up the plate with DraftKings Pick 6. Think of DraftKings Pick 6 as your fastball right down the middle. It's the easiest way to play for cash and take a shot at a big win. Just select 2 or more players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat. Pick 6 is available in most states, including California, Texas, Georgia, Missouri, and more. Cash in your baseball knowledge. New players get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly on just a $5 entry. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports for new customers to play $5. Get $50 in Pick 6 credits, better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
All right, Brenden, we are back on Cards Hub 365, and barring a game tonight, there will be a great starting pitching matchup, a rematch of sorts. If you go back to May 17th, Noah Cameron versus Miles Michaelis. Michaelis actually outdueled Cameron, who on the year is 2-1 with a 1.05 ERA. Michaelis 4-2 with a 3.9 ERA, had one of his lesser starts in his last time out, went 4 innings, gave up 4 runs. In a game that the Cardinals won, though, credit to Michaelis for hanging tough. But he went 6 innings, giving up 2 hits, 2 walks, and 4 strikeouts in that May 17th start. He needs to have a big night tonight. If you're St. Louis, you want to try and win this series so that you can afford to maybe struggle a little bit against the Dodgers. You can't get swept. You don't want to lose this series if you can avoid it. You don't want to lose any series if you can avoid it. But Michaelis has been as good as any, and hopefully he can find his way back to where he was for the majority of the month of May.
Yeah, that's what they need from him tonight. And that could even look like another 6 innings, couple of runs given up. I think Noah Cameron has been one of the surprises in baseball, really. That Royals rotation has been really, really good, but they were missing Seth Lugo for a while. They're still without Cole Reagans, at least for a few more days. And Cameron's somebody that I think that's the blueprint for what Cardinals fans maybe are hoping to see happen with Michael McGreevy. You force your way in due to whether it's an injury, whether it's due to this notion of, hey, you've got a lot of games to play and not many off days to work with. And so they might go to a modified 6-man rotation. And if the guy performs, he's going to keep his spot. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen with Noah Cameron, especially kind of after what the Cardinals did to Lorenzen yesterday. But look, I mean, this is a guy that even though he has had early success at the big league level, the Cardinals had a chance to look at him, and hopefully they're able to really continue the way that they have worked starters so well. I know that they were disappointed in the way that they performed against the Royals bullpen yesterday, not being able to quite add on after putting up a 7 spot. But I really think it was a good sign of what they did against Lorenzen. They have shown that they have a pretty good approach of being able to work starters no matter who's on the other side. And whether it happens in the early innings or whether you wait till the middle innings of a game, they're eventually able to get to these guys. And so that's what it's got to be, I think, tonight with Noah Cameron on the mound and find a way for that Cardinal lineup to be relentless in the way that we have known it to be for the majority of the season.
Yeah, maybe the one silver lining of yesterday was both teams had to go deep into their bullpens, not just the Cardinals. By getting Lorenzen out of the game, both teams might be a little bit handcuffed tonight. So whichever starter goes deeper, you might think has a better chance of getting the win. Now, you look at Miles Michaelis' career against the Kansas City Royals, 3-0 with a 1.67 ERA, 26 strikeouts in 4 games against the Royals. So he's been as good against the team from down I-70 as anyone in baseball. He needs to replicate that tonight here in game 2. Cameron, again, making his 5th start this year. We saw his stuff. The one hit he gave up ended up being the winning run, a solo home run by Jordan Walker at Kauffman Stadium.
Yeah, now I'm going to be looking to see what the Cardinal lineup is really able to do, because it's kind of been a case where a couple of the guys are maybe regressing a little bit. Victor Scott, I think, is probably a name that you watch for to try to find it back after he's had a much quieter week. But again, he's down at the bottom of your lineup. Guys like Contreras and Arenado, we've seen their OPSs dip below 700. And so, like, this is a lineup that you maybe wouldn't characterize right now that, oh, they've got everybody rolling at once. But I also think we're going to continue to see a little bit more Burleson, a little bit more Gorman, and those are two guys that had overall pretty good numbers at the plate yesterday. Obviously, the way the game ended, you regret to see the way that Nolan Gorman had that final swing go, but I still think some positives to take away from his standpoint, and I'll be curious to see with however the Cardinals lineup ends up looking tonight, if they're able to find a way to continue to get to some of these guys on the other side. It's just going to be interesting with the lefty on the mound. What do you decide to do with the two lefties that were really probably some of the better names in your lineup yesterday? Cardinals ended up with a whole bunch of righties on their bench at the end of that game, and I'm not sure a ton of them are names that you're just itching to get into the everyday lineup, but it's something that Ollie Marmol and his staff will be looking at and seeing the way that they can take their best shot against Cameron tonight.
And out of the Cardinals that are available on the roster right now, only one has recorded a hit against Cameron. It's Ivan Herrera. Jordan Walker had the other, but he, of course, is on the IL. So maybe that'll change tonight. Maybe it will not. Hopefully it is the former rather than the latter for St. Louis. Now, back to guys like Victor Scott and Ivan Herrera. Their struggles have been noticeable because they've come up in a lot of big moments, and we've been used to them rising to the occasion. Victor Scott being thrown out on that play by Bobby Witt was very surprising. Credit to Witt for making one of the best plays we've seen by a shortstop all year. But it's one of those things where, sometimes if bad things are happening, bad things continue to happen. You have bad luck.
Yeah, and bad luck is going to turn, I think, is the idea. If you continue to put in the work and you continue to play the same way and respond the same way to whatever that adversity might look like, you just don't want it to be something that impacts the next at-bat that you take or the next play that you're being called upon to make in the field. And I think that's at least something you can point to. Victor Scott has been still tremendous defensively in center and made a really, really fine catch to rob Jack Caglione of what would have been his first MLB hit and probably extra bases there in the early portions of that game last night. So there's still a lot of positives to take away from these guys in the lineup, and that's really maybe the name of the game. Like, as we look at this season from the big picture standpoint, we're still not 100% sure exactly the way that it's going to go for the Cardinals and what they're going to end up being as far as a record at the end of it. But I would look at it and say the margins are going to be maybe somewhat slim, and you have to continue to play good, clean baseball. And that means base running and defense have to continue to be a priority. And like you kind of think of a spot in last night's game. I don't know that it obviously changed the outcome because they ultimately recorded an out on the play. But John King, his kind of little lollipop to first base, that's the type of thing that you don't want to allow to creep in. And that you might say, well, that's a little bit different. It's a pitcher. It's not maybe indicative of what the fielders in general are doing and the sharpness of their game defensively. But I just think it's something you want to kind of be mindful of as the Cardinals maybe feel what's the makings of the first mini slump as a team that we have seen from them really since going back to the month of April. And so you want to make sure to kind of eradicate those types of things from your game as quickly as possible. And then when the luck does begin to turn, you're there to be able to take advantage of it and not have your kind of resting on your laurels and something else slips by the wayside that shouldn't have. And you might have your lucky moments, but you don't find a way to win as a result. The Cardinals are going to be ready, I think, when that luck does begin to turn. Last night, you could say the luck was on the bad side when it comes to BABIP. The batting average on balls in play from a pitch to contact staff definitely went against the Cardinals last night, and they'll hope that they'll keep the best defense out there that they possibly can and maybe have a little bit more fortune with another type of pitch to contact guy on the mound tonight in Miles Michaelis.
And the Cardinals are very much geared for a defensive game if they need to play that way. I will say this, is that if you look at St. Louis and you look at this team, you need to continue to play the way that you were playing in the month of May. It doesn't get any easier from here. It does get a little bit easier for some of your division rivals. And it's just one of those games where you feel like they need to win. You feel like they need to go out and execute because, like I said, things are going to be more difficult in the days ahead. Maybe the expectation should be lower, but I refuse to fall into that belief because of how well they played the month of May. They've shown us that they are a capable team. But right now, I think that the response tonight will be very telling of how the rest of this homestand will go. They've come out tonight with their hair on fire. You're going to expect to see a team that's motivated and frustrated from last night. If they come out flat, well, who knows what's going to happen, but it won't be a good sign, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, if they come out flat again, Stefan, then you can kind of say, okay, over the last 5 games, suddenly we're building a sample size where we can start to consider this more of a sticky thing, that they're maybe not playing at their sharpest. And the team on the other side is always pretty capable, and the Cardinals have had a run where it seems like they're playing more of those teams that are coming in with above 500 records or records at least near 500. And you can sit there and think about what the Cubs are doing and the benefit of the schedule that they're facing over the last 3-4 weeks, but it's just not going to do any good to, sit and think about those things. And I know the Cardinals players aren't. That's probably more of a fan base sort of thing. But yeah, I think as we're watching this team, we had sort of accepted, the Cardinals are for real. Like, whether they make the playoffs or whether they're a division caliber team, they're at least a team that's going to continue to be in the mix and be competitive. And so when you see a stretch of days where the Cardinals have not been quite as competitive as you would like to see, you hope that that's not, here the Cardinals are showing, who they really are. You'd like to think that maybe they're not the team that they showed to be in May, because they were just, at every turn, they were clicking in those slim margins, and they were finding a way to come away with a lot of those close games, and they were showing resilience and just everything you want to see. It's probably not realistic to expect that to be something that consistently happens through a full 6 months. But if you can have the downturn periods be 3-4 games instead of now it's 5, now it's 6, now it's, here come the Dodgers, that I think is going to be the difference maker in whether or not the Cardinals have staying power this year. And so, yeah, it is Miles Mikolas on the mound. There would have been a point in time this season when you would have said, like they've got the wrong guy out there. I think the Cardinals might have the right guy out there tonight. And Mikolas is somebody that, has a bit of a chip on his shoulder, you would think, after his last outing didn't go as well. So I'm anxious to see kind of the way that it plays out tonight for him, and the way the Cardinals are able to perform against Noah Cameron, who really shut him down the last time that he faced this lineup.
Hopefully no doubleheader for the Cardinals coming up. And I agree with that point. You look at that losing streak for teams around the league, you look at it for the Cardinals, and we can throw all the blame on yesterday's performance. But what you also can factor in is that last month they played one of the best months we've seen them play in the last 2.5 years. And because of that, it's afforded them a little bit of leeway to make mistakes. Now, you don't want to see them fall off the school bus. You don't want to see the wheels fall off. So I think that if they find a way to get back on track, if they find a way to win tonight, they can start stacking wins and put that loss behind them, because that's going to be what's so important, is maybe the mental side of it, putting a loss like that behind them and moving forward.
Agree with you, and this will be a big spot. And I think the rivalry aspect of it is something too, Stefan, that we haven't touched a lot on. We know it's out there. And at the ballpark last night, there were definitely a good amount of baby blue jerseys in the stands, and I don't think they were victory blues. I think you heard the Royals fans when big moments were happening for Kansas City, and so their fan base has definitely traveled to make this a destinational type of series. And we'll see if the Cardinals fans can have their way tonight, make a little bit more noise than the folks from out west.
Of course, barring any rain. So that's all I've got on this show. The Cardinals look to even up the series against the Royals after a tough loss last night. Brenden, do you have any final thoughts?
Final thoughts are, please don't rain, because I know the Cardinals have had about their fill of doubleheaders, and they would like to probably keep the schedule on track tonight. And it's been raining for most of the day, but maybe it clears out of the area and we get lucky with seeing some baseball tonight at Busch.
And you could certainly play baseball with a little bit of rain, just not a torrential downpour. This has been Cards Hub 365, powered by Gray Bar. All content here on Sports Hub STL is provided by DraftKings. The crown is yours. For Brenden Schaeffer, I'm Stefan Caray, signing off. Cardinals trying to even things up against the Royals in the I-70 series.